You ever hammer a piece of wood into the ground and accidentally trigger a neighborhood Cold War? I tapped in one innocent dock post and suddenly became public enemy number one of the suburban seas. Me. They say water brings people together, unless it sits in front of Barbara Penrose's dream sail view. The HOA said I was trespassing on the lake, so I showed them I owned the water. Tell me, has your HOA ever lost its mind over something this harmless? Drop your story in the comments, or let me know what you think of her reaction. Let me tell you what happens when a retired lake engineer taps a wooden post into the mud for a peaceful fishing dock. All HOA hell breaks loose. I hadn't even wiped the water off my gloves before Barbara Penrose, the 5-foot-tall menace in orthopedic sneakers, stormed across my yard like she was chasing down pirates. And right behind her, waddling like a Roomba in crisis mode, came Marvin Giles, holding a phone, a notepad, and absolutely no self-awareness. It's not every day your neighbors cosplay as Border Patrol because of a dock. Sir, you are tampering with community waters, and that's a violation of Section 12-ridiculous, Barbara bellowed, clutching her laminated rulebook like it was a holy relic passed down from the HOA gods. Marvin muttered something about documentation protocol and started filming me like he was live streaming from a war zone. I calmly placed my hammer down, pulled out my triple, stamped permit and watched Barbara's face fall faster than a loose garage shelf during inspection week. When I told her the lake was legally within my property line, she looked at me like I'd confessed to drowning the Easter Bunny. You can't own water. It belongs to the neighborhood soul, she screeched, which I assume is HOA code for, I never checked the deed. Marvin started measuring the shoreline like he was auditioning for CSI Suburbia, announcing with great pride that my post was exactly 14.7 inches from where community unity begins. Bless his heart, he brought a tape measure to a boundary fight and forgot to pack logic. Then came the best part. Barbara called the cops, like full 911, said I was committing aquatic vandalism, which isn't even a thing. Marvin positioned himself behind her like Spielberg filming a hostage negotiation, whispering, "Angle's good. Lighting's perfect." I sipped my coffee, leaned against my dock post, and thought, if ignorance were a boat, these two would need life vests. But I didn't flinch, because I knew something they didn't. This wasn't a lake dispute. It was a reckoning. Barbara thought she'd summoned the cavalry, but when that cruiser pulled up and read the fine print, let's just say one of us got a nod, and one of us got a verbal citation so sharp it could trim hedges. Wait till you hear what the officer said next. You ever watch someone's ego deflate so fast it makes a sound? That was Barbara when the officer flipped through my paperwork like it was the HOA Bible. Except mine was real. The cruiser hadn't even finished rocking on its shocks before Barbara sprinted over like she was handing off the final relay baton in a neighborhood Olympics. Officer, he's erecting unauthorized structures on our sacred water, she cried with all the drama of someone reporting a UFO crash. The officer, bless his beat-weary soul, gave a polite nod and turned to me. Permit, one word, one eyebrow, 1,000 volts of HOA tension. I handed him the papers, triple, stamped, city-sealed and notarized by someone with a neck tattoo of the Constitution. The officer scanned them with the bored efficiency of someone who's broken up more grill-related HOA fights than barbecued ribs at a 4th of July cookout. Meanwhile, Marvin kept circling like a discount drone, narrating his own low-budget documentary. Suspect is calm, possibly too calm, definitely hiding something. He tripped on a sprinkler head mid-sentence and face planted into a hydrangea. That bush had more authority than he did. Barbara's face went from HOA beige to federal audit purple. You can't just own nature! It belongs to the spirit of the neighborhood! She shrieked at me, like she was delivering a eulogy for a duck pond. The officer, to his credit, didn't laugh, just cleared his throat and said, Mom, this permit is valid. The lake's within Mr. Clark's property lines. If you have a civil disagreement, I recommend speaking with your HOA board or a property attorney, not emergency services. That's when Barbara's brain did a hard reboot. So you're saying this man can just stick poles in the lake like it's his backyard? She gasped. The cop paused. It is his backyard. The neighbors, silent. Marvin, still filming me, now with a bloody knee and grass stain on his forehead. Trying not to crack a smile wide enough to get fined for joy. Barbara stood there, clutching her rulebook like it had betrayed her in a divorce. The silence was glorious, until she whispered, "This isn't over." The cop left with a nod, neighbors wandered off with popcorn energy, and I turned back to my dock in progress. I figured that was the end of it. Maybe Barbara would sulk into her garden gnome army and Marvin would join a less embarrassing hobby like competitive Sudoku. But no, that would require a connection to reality. Instead, Barbara went full digital delusion. Because if legal documents couldn't beat me, she'd try Photoshop. Respect isn't barked into existence, it's earned with receipts, not rewritten rulebooks. Me. Barbara walked away, but not in defeat. No, she marched straight into her garage, fired up her old desktop, and began crafting the HOA's first ever slideshow smear campaign. And you won't believe what she claimed I was doing to the lake in high resolution. If Barbara's PowerPoint had a soundtrack, it would have been played on a kazoo in a haunted elementary school. 2 days later, the neighborhood mailboxes got blessed with hand-folded flyers inviting us to an emergency HOA informational. Barbara had bolded, "IF Armativa," like she was about to drop state secrets. But the only thing that dropped was Marvin's laptop halfway through. I showed up out of curiosity, and because my doc had become the neighborhood's favorite conversation starter, me. Barbara stood at the front of the clubhouse like she was testifying before Congress, dressed in HOA chic beige capris and a glare that could tan a cactus. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are under threat," she announced, clicking the first slide. What followed was a fever dream of digital lies. Hand-drawn maps with more red ink than a failed driving test. Photos of my dock warped through a fishy lens, and arrows that pointed nowhere but straight into Crazyville. According to her map, my private lake had mysteriously shifted ownership. Now labeled, Community Serenity Zone, Protected Area. I half expected her to add a dinosaur warning and call it Jurassic Lake. Marvin handled the visuals, but his laptop had the processing power of a microwave. Every time he tried to switch slides, the screen froze like it was gasping for air. "Barbara, it's not loading," he whispered. She hissed, "Oh, just click harder!" I sat in the back row, arms folded, watching this HOA page unravel like cheap yoga pants. When Barbara unveiled a scanned, historical boundary map, printed on what looked like deli paper, the whispers started. "That's not what the title office said. Did she just say emotional property rights?" That's when I stood up. "Folks," I said calmly, "let me share my version of reality." I connected my laptop to the projector. Quick, sharp, surgical, high-res satellite images, county boundary records, registered deeds with timestamps. Real documents that didn't look like they were sketched during a dental appointment. "As you can see," I concluded, "the lake is mine. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, legally." Barbara looked like she'd just swallowed a stapler. Marvin closed his laptop like it was radioactive. The room didn't erupt, but it shifted. Eyebrows raised, heads nodded, a few polite coughs from the former fence sitters. Barbara mumbled something about community traditions and spiritual stewardship, but even Dale the mailman was sighed, eyeing her like she just claimed clouds were HOA property too. I figured this had to be the end of her crusade. But no, Barbara wasn't retreating. She was just logging on. Because nothing says rational discourse like turning a dock dispute into a social media war. You can rewrite the rules, but you can't edit property lines with Microsoft Paint. Barbara's fantasy map fizzled, but her Facebook exploded, with lies, hashtags, and emotional damage. And if you think FikeDoczilla was bad, wait until you meet FiLakeIt leader. Barbara's Facebook turned into a telenovela, with herself as the damsel and my dock as the villain. Barbara's digital smear campaign launched faster than a toddler with a juice box and a grudge. Her first post featured a photoshopped image of me standing on my dock with lightning behind me, except the sky had been clear for weeks and I don't own a trench coat. The caption read me. "This man is destroying our peace." Hashtags included 5 Dock of Doom, Fe Bishop the Brute, and my personal favorite, Fen Nature Needs Justice. Apparently, my legally permitted fishing dock was now public enemy #1 in the HOA Hunger Games. The comment section turned into a wild rodeo of speculation and suburban rage. One woman said my dock was scaring away migratory birds. Another claimed her snoozer had become depressed since construction began. A few folks tagged local news stations. Some neighbors started treating me like I'd poured bleach into the lake. The barista at Bean and Bark Cafe stopped putting a lid on my latte. Even my dry cleaner asked me, "You that lake guy?" Like I was about to request they starch my villain cape. Things went from digital to deranged when I found 3 dead fish placed on my lawn in the shape of a peace sign. It was either a threat or a really confused art project. I stood there wondering if I should call animal control or the HOA exorcist. Marvin's grainy surveillance posts didn't help either. He uploaded slow-mo footage of me watering my plants and labeled it suspicious liquid activity. Somewhere between satire and slander, my reputation had gone from quiet conservationist to aquatic warlord. And I'll admit, after the 3rd silent treatment at the grocery store and the sideways glances from dog walkers who used to smile, I cracked a little. I started second-guessing myself, wondered if maybe I should have just bought one of those inflatable backyard pools and called it a day. Then, just when I was about to delete my own dignity, a low rumble filled the cold sack one morning. 6 motorcycles pulled up, American flags flying, and a man in full Navy dress got off and said, Heard someone tried to cancel a conservationist. It was the local chapter of Veterans for Conservation, and they weren't here for decaf diplomacy. By noon, they'd organized a flag raising next to my dock and invited the press. The same neighbors who'd iced me out were now offering lemonade and lawn chairs. Barbara watched from her blinds like a hawk who just got outmaneuvered by a flock of bald eagles. And while the vets saluted the flag, one turned to me and said, "Son, you build that dock. We'll build the wall of truth." I didn't cry, but my allergies sure picked a poetic time to act up. A lie spreads like wildfire, but truth rides in on chrome, wearing leather and honor. Barbara tried to cancel a conservationist, and got a full-blown flag brigade instead. But just when she ran out of HOA ammo, she pulled the pin on her next move, and it cost 6 figures. Buckle up. Turns out, Barbara didn't care about ducks. She cared about dollars, and my hedge was blocking her Zillow dreams. So picture this: I'm sitting on my dock, sipping iced tea, and when I get a text from a realtor friend that reads, "You didn't hear it from me, but someone's mad you ruined her open house." Attached, a photo of Barbara standing in her upstairs window, scowling at my dock like it just insulted her curtains. That's when the puzzle snapped together. The dock wasn't the problem. The view was. More specifically, her 6-figure view of the lake, which my humble platform had transformed into a real estate roadblock. Digging through county records felt like unraveling a Lifetime movie starring Barbara as the schemer-in-chief. She'd quietly listed her house for $899K, selling it as a panoramic waterfront estate. Problem: my dock was the new star of the panorama, and buyers weren't biting. One review on the listing literally said, "Great home, but the guy next door built a fishing shack on the lake." I'm not saying I smiled when I read that, but I absolutely smiled when I read that. It gets juicier. Turns out Barbara had signed the original HOA approval for my dock months earlier. Then she tried to claim forgery and procedural confusion, which is legal speak for "I gambled and lost." I got my hands on a copy of her forged revocation letter. It was in Comic Sans. That's right. The woman tried to cancel a legal permit using a font that's been banned in 5 professional circles and 3 common sense ones. When the truth hit the neighborhood like a bad casserole at a potluck, Barbara's for sale sign became more of a lawn ornament than an invitation. Buyers vanished faster than Marvin at HOA budget meetings. Her home value tanked by over $250K overnight, and you know that smug expression she wore like pearls. Gone. Replaced by a twitch and a permanent pair of sunglasses that screamed, "Please don't recognize me at Trader Joe's." But poetic justice wasn't done marinating. The buyer who did eventually scoop up her house wasn't some random out-of-town family. No, ma'am, It was a young Air Force couple with a toddler, a flagpole, and a love for lakeside grilling. The first thing they did, hang a giant American flag from the 2nd-floor balcony, directly above where Barbara used to stand shouting about emotional lake boundaries. I nearly choked on my sweet tea when I saw it. Greed builds walls, but the truth plants hedges and charges market value for shade. Barbara lost her view and her valuation, but her biggest heartbreak, it wasn't the sale, it was the new neighbors. Stick around, because what they did next would have made a patriot weep and a Karen wail. Nothing screams poetic justice like an American flag the size of a pickup truck hung by your home's new owners, an Air Force family. Barbara's departure wasn't so much a move as it was an escape. She left in a U-Haul that looked like it had PTSD, windows covered with towels like she was fleeing a witness protection breach. The "for sale" sign was gone, but the bruised reputation lingered like the smell of expired coleslaw. And the kicker: the couple that moved in had more stars on their porch than Barbara ever had on Zillow. Captain Jenna and Tech Sergeant Miguel Martinez moved in like the 4th of July came early. Within 72 hours they had installed a solar flagpole, strung up red, white, and blue wind chimes, and invited me over for grilled bratwursts and lemonade that tasted like vindication. When I asked what made them pick the house, Miguel winked and said, "The lake view and the neighborhood drama." Turns out, they'd seen the viral Facebook post with the hashtag 5DockOfDoom and thought, now that's our kind of place. Meanwhile, my dock had become the unofficial therapy zone of the block. Retirees fished. Teens skipped stones. One kid brought a kazoo and played taps every time a fish got away. Even Marvin, previously Barbara's human tripod, started strolling past with his poodle and nodding respectfully like I was the town sheriff. The local paper eventually caught wind and published a full-page spread titled, "From HOA War to Lakeside Peace." I framed it. Barbara probably laminated it and used it as a dartboard. What used to be whispers about Clark's weird dock project had turned into block-wide group chats about lake picnics and kayaking schedules. And every time someone mentioned community, they weren't referring to the HOA anymore. They meant the people who actually lived there. One neighbor even brought me homemade cornbread with a note that read, "Sorry I believed the witch. Your dock rocks." I didn't know whether to laugh or nominate her for sainthood. But the true highlight came during the flag-raising ceremony. The entire block gathered while Miguel saluted. Jenna sang the national anthem off-key, and I stood there like the ghost of neighborhood justice past. As the flag unfurled over Barbara's former porch, a breeze lifted it just enough to snap across the air like a well-timed mic drop. Someone whispered, "She's probably watching this from her condo in shame." I just smiled and passed out hot dogs. When spite sells out, honor moves in and paints the mailbox red, white, and truth. Barbara was gone, but the saga had one last twist, because a week later, Aisle 3 of the local grocery store turned into the final battlefield, and Barbara brought an apology so bizarre, I thought she was trying to return it for store credit. She came around the corner near the frozen peas, and froze harder than the packaging. I was just minding my business, hunting for a tub of discount hummus, when I heard the sound of nervous clearance heels squeaking like a dollar store clarinet. And there she was, Barbara, the Benedict Arnold of backyards, clutching a bag of lima beans like it was a legal defense. Her eyes did a triple take at me, at the cart, and at the oversized "Support Our Vets" pin on my hoodie. She looked like someone who just walked into their own intervention. "Clark, I may have overreacted," she muttered, every syllable dragging its feet like it owed rent. I nodded, offered a polite smile, and kept pushing my cart past the waffle section like I was the ghost of HOA trauma past. She scurried off, but not before whispering, "I never wanted it to go that far." I didn't say it, but my chili seasoned cashews did. "Too late, Karen." That little run and was enough to send trimmers down the suburban grapevine. By sunset, 3 neighbors texted asking if it was true that Barbara apologized in a freezer aisle like it was courtroom drama night at the Kroger. I confirmed it with a simple, "Yep, right next to the peas and poetic justice. But the real cherry on this ironic Sunday. The kids in the neighborhood had officially renamed the hedge Bishop's Line. Some even started leaving tiny plastic soldiers at the base like it was sacred suburban ground. The name stuck. Someone spray painted it on a rock. A local teen added it to Google Maps as a historical landmark. The HOA, now completely remodeled with actual adults, voted to install a small wooden sign next to the shrub. Bishop's Line, where freedom grew. I hadn't felt that kind of respect since it's the time I parallel parked in one try at the DMV. It was surreal. Barbara's war against a fishing dock had planted a legend. Irony must have taken up gardening, but the moment that truly sent her HOA legacy up in smoke, the neighborhood unveiled a new plaque outside the clubhouse, in recognition of lakeside unity and community resilience, dedicated to those who chose truth over control. It didn't name her, but it might as well have been carved on her expired block captain badge, The look on her face when she drove by and saw it was the spiritual equivalent of watching a pie adder explode, except this one was filled with ego and legal threats. Some people fight for fences. Others plant legacy with them. Either way, the roots will remember who watered them with spite. You'd think that was the final punchline, but no. Because the last laugh wasn't on Barbara's lawn. It was under it, and when you hear who the HO hired to replace her, bring popcorn. They unveiled the new park sign right beside my dock, Bishop's Landing, for all who stand their ground. Even the mayor showed up. The crowd clapped like we just defeated a dragon with a measuring tape. There were lawn chairs, lemonade pitchers, and more flag polos than a 4th of July cookout. The mayor gave a speech about civic virtue, the city planner cried near the hedge, and 3 middle schoolers performed a dramatic reading of HOA violation letters like it was Shakespeare. I stood there in fishing boots, watching them cheer for a dock that almost cost me my sanity and my Saturday mornings. That dock, it now had a mini library box, a bench carved by a retired Navy vet, and a kayak ramp kids nicknamed the Freedom Launch. Every once in a while someone would tie a ribbon around the post that Barbara once claimed would bring ecological doom. I left it standing, just like my spine, because sometimes the best memorial to nonsense is not erasing it, it's framing it in oak. Neighbors planted tomatoes and basil around it, joking that spite made the soil richer. Barbara vanished, not just from the HOA but from the history books. They scrubbed her name from the newsletters, the budget logs, and even the HOA bylaws, like she'd been a bad dream in orthopedic sneakers. And just to seal it, the new HOA leadership approved a motion to carve one final reminder into the community stone near the front entrance. Don't go full Barbara. It sits proudly under a sunflower bed. Tourists ask if Barbara was a historical figure. I just say sort of, like a cautionary tale in capri pants. The real mic drop came when a local news crew ran a segment called From Dock Fight to Delight, the town that reclaimed its HOA. My face was plastered next to Barbara's old fake map. Hers labeled HO property, mine labeled reality. One neighbor told me, "You won a war without swinging a punch." I replied, "I used the sharpest tool available, fee and receipts." The network asked if I wanted to run for city council. I said, "Only if we can ban clipboards before coffee." You don't win people with noise. You win them with truth, with time, and maybe with a few well-placed lawn gnomes holding protest signs. If you've ever faced a clipboard crusader in Crocs, share this story with someone who's been there. Drop your HOA horror tale in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories where poetic justice always finds a front row seat and a properly permitted dock. See, Barbara tried to use fake power to fence off real connection, But the neighborhood learned something bigger than boundary lines. Legacy isn't built with megaphones and meetings. It's built with quiet courage, a bit of humor, and a whole lot of patience, When they tried to isolate me, the truth built a bridge. Literally, that's the lesson. Don't let petty power scare you into silence. Stand your ground, but do it with grace and good lighting, This wasn't just about property. It was about principle. And now, every time someone paddles out past my dock, they pass a little plaque that says, "Community over control." That's the real win, If this story made you laugh, made you think, or made you remember your own HOA horror story, share it with a friend who needs to hear this. Drop your wildest neighbor moment in the comments. And if you want more stories where common sense beats clipboard chaos, hit like, smash subscribe, and buckle up, because the next episode might just start with a lawn flamingo and end in federal court.